Eva Cvijanović is with me. And I'm so happy that, Eva, you managed to join the festival. In your busy post-production stage of promoting the film and traveling with the film, which is really important as well. We have to say that you were one of the few at this year Animateka that has a film selected in the children program as well as in the main competition. And I think tomorrow night we will watch Hedgehog's Home at the Kinodvor Cinema as part of the Eastern and Central European competition. Your film is co-produced by Bonobo Studio Croatia, Vanja Andrijević, the producer, still with us there, hi Vanja, and the National Film Board of Canada, where actually it's Eva's home studio. We could say, like, you are living and working in Montreal, Canada now for 10 years almost, we could say. Let me just say hello to the newcomers. We have a big bunch of Middlesex University from London that just joined, so I'm happy that they arrived just on time to listen and to hear about the making of a great film, which is Hedgehog's Home. Eva, the mic is yours. I will try not to intervene, maybe just a few interventions that if there will be a moment of silence or something.
No problem.
And we hope that we will have at least 10 minutes for Q&A, so prepare your questions. Thank you, Eva.
Thank you so much, Igor, for having me and also for supporting my film since my university days. So it's a real pleasure to be here. I'm gonna get started. Can you hear me if I'm like this? Yeah? Okay, great. So this is, you know, for the Slovenians, maybe you've heard about this story before. I'll guide you a bit through through my past work and how I got to making Hedgehog's Home, and then we'll talk about more in detail how the film got made. So for me, this book that the film is based on, I knew the poem in it by heart before I knew how to read. It's a story that I grew up with. It's a story that my parents grew up with, and when I read it as a grown-up and as an immigrant living in Canada, I thought, well, there's something here maybe for everyone, and not just for children and not just for people from former Yugoslavia. So I thought, you know, it would be a good idea to try and make the film. My films all look extremely different. I work in different mediums, and I kind of approach every film with a clean slate, and I try and think about what would be the best medium to use to tell the story that I want to tell. And that's why maybe there's not a very obvious visual relation through them. This was my graduation film. It's extremely homemade, DIY, but it was a stop motion, and that's where I kind of got my hands dirty a little bit with making armatures, and I got to very, very, quickly and very roughly play inside of this three-dimensional stop-motion world. And I think that also, when came the time to make a decision about what technique to use to make Hedgehog's Home, maybe the fact that I had experience making a stop-motion film before, that influenced my decision. After graduating, I got funding from a fund in Canada for immigrants to make Once Upon a Many Time, which is based on my childhood drawings, and it tells the story of how we left Sarajevo in the early 90s. Thanks to making that first film, I was eligible for more grants. Eventually, I got accepted into this program that the National Film Board of Canada has. The National Film Board of Canada, they produce documentary and animated films, and have since around World War II times, when the institution was put together to basically make war propaganda. And now they have a program that's called Hot House, that's for emerging filmmakers, and they take 6 young filmmakers or artists, and they get them to each do a 1-minute film and within a 3-month period, and that's kind of like a crash course in how films are made at the NFB, and I got lucky enough to be selected one of the years. And I made this film, The Kiss, which is 2D, which is a technique that I'm actually more comfortable with myself when I'm the one animating it. And the KISS, although it hasn't really been showed in festivals, it really opened a door for me to get inside of the NFB and to meet these wonderful people who work there. And also the design kind of expanded into this one November day I was on a train and I was doing these drawings, and I made a bunch of drawings about this kind of fat character bathing in the sea. And of course, it was November in Canada, and this is like my brain and nostalgia just calling me to the Adriatic, which is where I grew up. So out of these drawings came Seasick, which is a film about, just like sea nostalgia, I guess. And this was also done independently, thanks to Canadian film funding. And this film, it got accepted in a children's selection at AnimaFest. And at that time, a person who was the editor on my Hot House film became a producer, and we had by then talked about maybe making Hedgehog's Home, but it was really more like a fantasy than a reality. But when Seasick got selected in AnimaFest, it was really, we saw it as a big opportunity because we knew that if we were ever to make Hedgehog's Home as a film, we wanted to make it as a co-production. And ideally, actually, the dream was to make it like a Yugo-wide co-production, but dreams don't always come true exactly in the way that we want them to. And anyways, we took this opportunity to contact a producer in Croatia, who's Vanja Andrijević, who's right here, from Bonobo Studio. And she was really a perfect fit in many, many ways to co-produce this film with us. And she worked with wonderfully talented animators, Ivana Bošnjak and Thomas Johnson, who got on board very quickly. And within a few months, we were kind of we were on our way to making this film.
Can I stop you just to tell that Ivana Bošnjak and Thomas Johnson are also with us, and they will start today at the Slovenian Cinematec with their puppet motion performance. They will be baking pizzas that you will all have a chance to eat tonight from 11 at Kino Dvor. So pass to the Cinematec and see the process of Thomas and Ivana playing with their puppets, making them cook and making them do other stuff.
Yeah, I'll be there right after this. And also, pizza's my favorite food. So I can't wait. So this is an original drawing, and our first pitch when we went to Zagreb was to make kind of an homage to the original design, which is what I did. But then very, very soon after that, I realized that maybe expanding this world beyond the original illustrations, which for themselves are so perfect in a way, I thought, okay, maybe let's get deeper into the forest and let's get out of this illustrated world and explore the animal world that's maybe more inside of my head or beyond the illustrations. The technique that I chose, I made the choice very early on to use felted wool. For me, there's the tangible warmth of wool when we see it, which, for a story that's about home, it was perfect. The feeling of a blanket, the feeling of wool, it's warm and it's comforting, and to me that's the feeling that home provides. It also has, the vibrant colors of wool. There's a certain folk feeling to it, and so in that way, it references the illustrations because there is, there's something folk, but also not a very specific folklore. It's more of like a general feeling of something that is timeless. And so stepping away, this was like a really rough, ugly Photoshop sketch of what the house might be. And this is then still from the film of the final result. I'll talk a bit about the pre-production process because it is really important, and it's also a very exciting time where everything is possible. So this is me sitting in front of the storyboard in our little studio, Bonobo Studios puppet studio in Zagreb. And you might see that there's, when we put it all on the wall, there's like this color progression, which is nice to see how colors of the film, the mood changes, and it kind of influences also the narrative, I think. This is just a little drawing from the storyboard. As you see, it's very, very simple. But I think there's also, you know, it's done in crappy Photoshop, but there's also a certain charm to it, although it is simple. This is a full page. And I actually work very, like, Animatic and Storyboard are kind of done simultaneously. One informs the other. And I had done the Animatic. I chose to do it because it was a stop-motion film. I chose to do it in a 3D software, very, very roughly. But I found that having this three-dimensional space that I could move in was closer to stop motion than illustrating it in 2D. So I'll show you a very short clip from the very, very early Animatic with me narrating the story.
Toga vide, strista kopalja na jurišide. Jastreb ga štuje, vuk mu se sklanja, zmije ga šarka po svu noć sanja. Pred njim dan hoda, širi se strava. Njegovim tragom putuje slava.
It was your voice, your interpretation, right?
Yes. So yeah, you know, it's ugly and rough, but it's actually, I think this opening sequence, we'll see it at the end when I show the making of video, but it ended up being quite close. It was a very good guide for the final film. Oops. So how to move from these beautiful characters from the book into stop motion and into the film. First I decided to undress them. I think that clothing is very subjective, and it really influences our reading of a character and, you know, their social status and all these things, and these are things I wanted to strip the animals away. I wanted to not have that influence our feelings towards them. And yeah, just to neutralize them a bit and to let the audience make up their mind about who these guys are. Then we have, you know, for those of you that are familiar with stop motion, this is all news, but for those of you who are not, this is what they look like on the inside. We got the armatures made with Semaphore from Poland, based on, you know, sketches. And these are different stages of me making the hedgehog. Ivan and Thomas helped me with the inside structure, but I kind of built I felt it on top of it, and it was my way of being very physically involved with the film, because it was the first film that I directed and didn't animate myself. So it was important that I somehow, you know, my handprint is in the film. These are the different stages of the fox. As you see, it's very rough, and these are the bad guys. I'm not going to show the film, so you should really come and see it tomorrow.
Tomorrow night at 7 at Kinodvor.
I hope this gives you a little bit of a taste for it. And the environments were also extremely important, because for me it's the mood, and it's also a storytelling device. And being in the forest, you know, light is extremely influential in how we experience a scene or a setting. So we went for a more natural look, and we made, this is Kata and Ivana, felting all the things by hand. Then we made these little islands, because we knew we wanted to have many different sets in the forest. So to make our life easier, we kind of had this modular design that it was easy to take a scene apart. I mean, easy. You know, but it would take us like a day, which I think is not too bad, to take it apart and put another scene together again. And these little islands allowed us to really recycle parts of the forest without having to redo them from scratch. This is Thomas making a tree. He's really happy about it. And this is Marko Meštrović, who's also making like a close-up, so, you know, forest perspective and all these things. but yeah, everything is handmade, and we used different techniques of flat felting for the leaves and the sky, and then needle felting for all the things that were three-dimensional. There's a little mushroom growing at the beginning of the film, so for that we had a replacement animation. And then to be economic, we reused each one of the instances of that mushroom to populate a scene later on in the film. So the sky, as I said, is also made by felting. I'll show you a little video of the process, basically of flat felting. This is on a very large scale. But one of the reasons why I also wanted the sky to be wool and to be, this is the sunset sky. That's then backlit, and one thing is that I really wanted everything, I didn't want green screens, and I wanted everything to be as much as possible in the camera to have a real feeling of being there in the world, because for me, as soon as I noticed the green screen, I get pulled out of the film, and I wasn't sure that, you know, to achieve something that feels real with the green screen, it was just, in a way, it was more work for me than to just try and create everything there and then. This is a set of Fox's house in action with Thomas animating the fox. As you see, everything is kind of cut up, and we really focused. We designed every shot, you know, for the lens, and so that saved us space and time. And you know, I'm going to repeat this over and over again, but doing the maximum amount with minimum means is really something that's important for me, and it fuels the creative side, and it also is very relevant for Hedgehog's home, because it's about a hedgehog who loves his home no matter how humble it is. So for the sets, I also then again started with a 3D sketch that I then did a really kind of rough Photoshop job on it, and then we have the final thing, a still from the film. For Fox's house, you know, I saw her as this kind of hoarder of everything shiny, and kind of she loved like these human objects she would find in the trash. So I went to Hedgehog in Zagreb. It's like a flea market a lot, and I, just like the fox, accumulated tiny porcelain things and all these things I could find, you know, in my old house. And then Ivana and Thomas made a lot of props themselves, but it was this really interesting combination of taking real life elements and then doing some custom made things. And we did the same thing for Fox's house on the outside. The rocks you see there, they're real rocks, which is really neat when you're building it, but unfortunately it makes it hard to take the set apart and like bring it places. But all these rocks are accumulated from different parts of Croatia, so that's really special. You know, some of them are from like my house in Pelješac, some of them are from Pag, from Zagreb, and so, you know, I think like visually and then thematically somehow things, when they work in both ways, that makes me really happy. This is just a little video of how the setup was done for the Fox's house. Oops. Ovako. Može ovako. Yeah. So cinematography with Ivan Slipčević was a cinematographer of the film. He's wonderful, and he works on both documentary and stop motion films. He worked on Ivan and Thomas's previous film, Simulacra. And, you know, he's the light magician, really helped define the mood and the look of the film. This was super early tests we did when the sets were still in the making. So this is a daytime set and a nighttime test, which is very, very close, both of them, to the final look. And then we went for certain of the environments, for the bad guys that don't have houses as such, but I thought it would be interesting to really build personalized environments with light, and here we have a little bit of compositing with this kind of mist that we created and stylized. You know, we went beyond just the natural look of the forest to create these worlds. We also worked with kind of customized optics. Elise Simard, who's my friend from Montreal, she came to Zagreb for a month to help us with doing things in camera and doing film effects maybe an old school way. So we worked with vintage lenses to have a look, you know, we had a digital camera and a vintage lens to have this kind of, once again, a timeless look that didn't feel maybe too nostalgic or you know, like we were trying to be vintage, but yeah, I really wanted people not to, when they see the film, that they couldn't say, oh, this was made in 2017. Like, it could have been made in the 80s or something. And she also helped with doing little filters that we put on the lens while filming. So a lot of effects that would otherwise be done in After Effects or something like that, we were doing it right there on the set. And in one way, you can't go back, but in another way, it's kind of, while you're animating it, and then as soon as you see it afterwards, you see the world that you've created. And as a director, it's, you know, you really see that the whole picture come together. So these are examples of Elise's filters. We did one pass of a point of view of the animals running through the forest. So then we did another pass of the same shot, but with a physical motion blur. We moved the camera while we were shooting. And then we did this wolf filter with speed lines to emulate speed. And then this very, very confusing bear filter. And then by combining all of them, we were able to achieve like different you know, perspectives from the different animals. This is a little test. So yeah, feeling is like the most important thing for me, I think, in filmmaking. I think if the feeling that I want to project reaches the audience, I've succeeded. So because this film is about home, I wanted to create a feeling of home, and a big part of it is the way the characters are animated. And Ivan and Thomas did a really beautiful job at not being too cartoony, which, you know, just having the world be believable and realistic, whether you're a child or a grown-up. So this is you know, cozy home in the film, cozy studio making the film. Because we had low ceilings, you know, we had to bring it all the way down, and Ivan and Thomas had to animate on their knees, this one shot. But there's something in this problem solving that does fuel the creativity. So this is that shot that you see, you know, of the animals chasing the hedgehog home. And I think they had like this much space under the table to make the animals walk. And it's kind of nice to see the shot from this perspective, because you can also see these little mistakes that are hidden by the camera point of view. Also working with felt was a really cool challenge. Tim Allen, who was a consultant on the film, kind of gave us this little tip of brushing the animals at every frame, so that we don't see, what you don't know is like every time we touch the animal, that area moves from frame to frame. So we brush the whole animal, and this is something that a lot of people who see the film react to, is like if there was this little wind and their fibers are moving constantly, and it gives the animals a certain life and charm. It also, because we worked with felt, facial expressions were really interesting to do, because you could get really precise, and you could get a subtlety of emotion that maybe would be difficult had we not had such a flexible and malleable material. And so on top of there being wiring in the faces, there was also just like very, very subtle animation using the felting needle. So there's this little clip that combines both the animals getting home and then the moment that Hedgehog puts himself to bed.
kućicu, draga, slobodno moja.
We also did some large-scale stuff, and just to keep things consistent, I kind of separated large-scale scenes from normal. I mean, they're both smaller than real life. Well, actually, here Hedgehog is much bigger than real-life hedgehogs. But and this was really fun, and it's kind of nice to switch it up from time to time. Always working in a small scale, and you get a bit bigger. And so we had this kind of luscious food scene for which we created all this hairy food. These are kind of the flat sheets of felt that I made that then we made the vegetables out of. And this is during the shooting of that scene. We also had to animate elements like the wind. So here in the opening shot that you'll see in the making of, this is actually Thomas using a hair dryer while the camera is moving through the forest. And things like the snow, it's pretty neat. We did a contraption. This is also in collaboration with Elise Simard. Because we were trying to really do everything in camera. I'll play it again. Oops. We brought it really close to the lens, and so even the wires that were there, they almost looked like glistening snow. So there no compositing needed. It was all done in camera. So I'll just play this really short little making of video.
Through old tangled paths to the forest edge, proudly wanders mighty Hedgehog Hedge. Dearest Hedgie, you are on my mind. A friend like you is so hard to find. Join me today for a yummy feast. Hurry up, my dear. Come visit at least. Please, stay the night. Don't go anywhere. Under starry skies, he mutters with mirth, my own sweet home, my heaven on earth.
The ta is
Should be when he's off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so the ta is like the and then he's like
What's the hurry? Now tell the old hound. Have you found a place where sheep abound? Say what you want about my home. Only you scoundrels, the laziest bunch, would give up your home for a lousy lunch. You have no clue what makes you rich. Someday, very soon, you'll end in a ditch. I get it now. Hedgehog is right.
So that's it. If you have questions, we can, or Igor, if you have questions.
Okay, thank you, Eva, for sharing for sharing those precious material with us, because I think it's so important to see, and it's so well prepared already, the making of, that you could, and you did some, many times, like you toured around with presenting it, I guess, no?
Yeah, it's really cool that the last presentation I did was in Japan, so it's kind of cool to present it in front of different audiences too.
Okay, I have a first question, but then get ready, maybe we can get some light as well so we see each other better. You were talking about feelings, and actually for you the most important thing to bring in to the film and then pass to the audience. The opening scene, it has a spaghetti western feeling. So where did this element came in, and why it's a feeling that you want to pass?
Sure. Well, spaghetti westerns, I mean, besides really loving, Ennio Morricone's music, which I think really guides feelings throughout the film without being overbearing or cheesy. I mean, that was the inspiration. And by the way, Darko Rundek, who's kind of a rock star, former Yugo rock star, did the music for the film, and it was great of him to collaborate with me and really give me some of that Western. But the reason why I chose spaghetti Western is because I kind of saw Hedgehog as this lone cowboy. The idea of a hero, it translated well to a lone cowboy character. But it was, instead of the usual lone cowboy, he doesn't have a home, he roams around, and he's always on the go. And in this way, Hedgehog is like this domesticated lone cowboy, but it's a character with like these hardcore values, and so each one of his adventures is an opportunity for him to reaffirm where he stands.
Mm-hmm. Anybody wants to ask something specific? Yes? Wait, we have a mic. Yeah.
Thank you. With the sound, do you have, is it all like naturalistic? Because I thought I heard some like felt noises, if that makes any sense at all. And I was wondering, like, are you trying to go for like a more natural, or are you trying to like more natural sounds, or are you trying to go for sounds that make it feel more homely, like the felt kind of things?
Yeah, well, it's a really delicate balance of both. We worked with a wonderful sound designer. His name is Olivier Calvert, and he works in Montreal. He's worked on, with like Prit Parn and Theo Ushev and so many amazing animators, and he did a really good job balancing the two. My first idea was to go full on felt, actually to have it sound the way it looks somehow, but very early on, like, Olivier convinced me that would just end up sounding weird, and we wouldn't be able to get into the film, and he was right. So it's a combination. There's moments where he, like in the scene where Hedgehog goes to sleep, the moment that the firefly has a sound of its own, but the moment that the firefly lights up, he put in a sound of fire in the back. And that, I think, subconsciously for all humans is the sound of comfort and safety. So it's kind of combining. And then, of course, like when the animals move, we did felt sounds. We tried to have this sound of fabric or wool. It wouldn't feel like skin. It would feel like fur or felt. So it was a really neat combination of the two, and it was really, really cool to work with Olivier very closely and to craft the sound part of it.
Actually, it's like I have the impression that also, like, from the beginning, you really wanted to keep it like no post-production edit, so you really wanted to do it like straight as much as possible analog,
yeah.
But then you had to make some compromises, and I think that filmmaking, when you're working with a bigger team, and actually it's like it was not so big, but quite big also, like if you compare it to your previous projects where you were all alone. So like those compromises, were there moments where you were thinking like, no, why am I compromising so much, or you were quite safe on this side, like during the production, that you trusted your collaborators, you had a great team?
I mean, I definitely trusted my collaborators, but there's definitely also moments within production where you're pulling your hair out, you know? So I think what's really important is to have a solid vision, and I think that I had. This story, you know, marinated with me for 30 years before I went around to making the film. So I think that helped because I knew where compromises could be made and where it wasn't, where I knew that I had to like put my foot down and stick to my gut feeling. So I think once again it's a sliding scale, and maybe directing, I'm discovering now after this experience of being really just a director and not being so much the craftsman in the film, where maybe that's the art of directing, is finding where to, you know, I think it's the most important thing is like, it's like casting your crew, is working with people that you know can translate your vision and maybe do an even better job than you at what you would like to do. And then the second part is like guiding them throughout the process so that you get what you had in mind, and also embracing their qualities and you know, these things that are outside of yourself that give the film like this more complex flavor, let's say, than if it would have been just only me, you know. So it can be tough, but I think as long as you have your vision and your, you know, before you start making the film, make sure that you know where you want to go with it, and then if you can stick with that, it will come together in the end. Yeah.
Can we use the chance also to speak with Vanya? Oh, Jonathan, yes, please.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. So one is about really just about scheduling and how long. I think it's very interesting for our students from Middlesex to understand like the different stages and how long it takes to plan maybe the whole pre-production of the film, and then when you go into the production, actually I don't know how long your film is, but how long you're actually working on model sets and then the actual animation, what sort of times?
Sure.
Eva, and if you cannot answer completely, then Vanya Andrijević, the co-producer, is in the back, and we will give her the mic as well.
I mean, I'll try, and then Vanya can correct me. But the pre-production for the film was done in Montreal, and then again the post-production, and the production itself was done in Zagreb. The pre-production maybe took a bit longer than it should have because there was all these rights issues. The rights belong to a country that doesn't exist anymore. And so there was, you know, because it's the NFB, everything needs to be very legal. But beyond that, so the pre-production, storyboard, animatic, design of everything, it took a bit over 6 months. This including all the rights and complications or resolutions around that. The production itself, with set building and animation, took about a year for a 10-minute film, with a crew of 2 animators altogether. For the confection of the sets, we had 3 other helpers, part-time-ish to full-time. And we had 1 AD and the cinematographer. So it was quite a small crew, but it's also a short film. And I think our plan was to make it within the year, and we pretty much finished on time, which I was really proud of. So the shoot took about, 7 months to shoot, and I guess 3 months to make things, and there was a bit of overlap where we had somebody help out with the confection, and I was doing, you know, I was there every day with the animators, and so sometimes I would multitask. I would like felt things while they're animating and do both.
And then post-production?
And then post-production, well, that also wasn't full-time because of scheduling things at the NFB, but I got back to Montreal in June, and the film was completely done by the end of the year. But you know, this is also scheduling actors and online and time and all that, so it took a bit longer than if it was in a full-time. The whole film took about 2.5 years from beginning till the end.
And the actors were recorded after you completed the animation?
Well, actually, we animated two. The Croatian actor was recorded before the shoot, and he also did an English version. But we ended up hiring a Canadian actor, Kenneth Welsh, to do the English version later. I kind of wanted Rade Šerbedžija to do both English and Croatian, but we realized with the Anglophone community, maybe it was better that it was somebody without an accent and that they can just focus on the story itself. Because Rade, he's in Downton Abbey, and he was in like a lot of Hollywood films, and so he speaks English very well, but we realize when it's just the voice, you kind of don't want the accent to be that distracting. So yeah, so we had, when we were animating, we had 2 tracks of Croatian and English, and we on purpose, the lip sync is off. That's another spaghetti western thing for me, where lip sync is off in both versions so that we don't just stick to one version, because we knew the film was actually going to be in 3 languages. We also have a French version of it.
I've got one more. Just about interested in kind of creative control, and when you're working for the National Film Board, do they let you just go off and do it, or or are they sort of
Control freaks.
Yeah, is there a lot of interaction with the NFB?
Well, I had 2 producers on 2 different continents, and so, you know, while I was in Zagreb, the NFB producer was not there all the time, but Vanja was. So it's a good crash course in everything. There's definitely, they don't just let you do your thing. So you kind of have to justify your decisions, which is not a bad thing. You know, to rethink why you're making decisions and to make sure that that's the right decision to make.
And do they impose their decisions on you?
No, they don't impose.
No.
But you were explaining at the beginning that actually there is all this legal thing going on before actually shooting, so it's like...
Yeah, because there's so many things that can influence what you can do, you know, including legal things, and they don't, you know, really at the NFB, if you really want it in like straightforward terms, they could use the right of veto, but they don't. So it's always a discussion, and it's always a dialogue, and it's always, it's more like questioning than imposing, which is fine. It can be frustrating at times, you know, but it's also, as you know, somebody, it's my first time that I did anything of this scale, and it's the first time that I was really like a director on a film, that I wasn't doing everything on it. It was a really good experience. I've learned a lot, so yeah. We can talk more about this later if you want.
Let's say we have 10 more minutes, and Eva, I would like to pass the mic to Vanja, but before of that, at the beginning, I really completely forgot to give you like the compliments, because you got 2 good news just lately. One is that beside Kintis Lundgren, which is also like a co-production with the NFB, also Hedgehog is selected for Sundance Film Festival, which is, wow, I think it's important. But then Spela, which is with us, she was there last year, and she can tell us, she can kind of like say that, she told us that actually as a short animation filmmaker there, you are just one in the last row somehow, but it's important to be there, that's for sure. And one thing that is even more important for the film, like especially for the American continent, is the nomination to the Annie Awards in Los Angeles, so compliments. So it's...
Thank you.
You brought it as far away as possible, I think, not only to festivals around the world, but also like those awards that are important then for the NFB and for Bonobo Studio as well, I would say. So Vanja, maybe a short question for you. It was a big task for you as well, even though you are quite experienced as a producer. You already did films that were heavy, but this one was extremely heavy, I would say. So what was your what are your feelings now when you successfully did it, and have you been in the middle of the production somewhere really afraid that maybe everything would crash down or would
What difficult questions, Igor, really.
as always with Igor. uh, this is a story that I really wanted to make. I mean, I really wanted to make it happen. So I wasn't thinking that much. If I was, I probably would not do it. Because at many points it seemed, some things seemed impossible, but also with the help from Jelena Popović, who is very persistent producer, and she just doesn't give up. And also, of course, with Eva, who is one of the rare filmmakers I've worked with such a strong vision. Really, like, it's something that you don't meet every day. Even when we had some discussions and so on, she has such good arguments about any of the choice that she makes. That you just, have to accept her
Well, she's the director.
her kind of story.
Hey, the decision to animate in Zagreb was taken from the beginning, or it was?
It was kind of, yes, from the beginning, because I suggested that she could work with Ivana and Thomas, because I used to work with them as well. And both Eva and Jelena agreed with that. And also, production-wise, I mean, it was kind of easier to do it in Zagreb, in one place, and it's cheaper, if I may say that as well. And we got used to, working with low budgets and with
Extreme situations.
Exactly, yes, and problem solving and stuff like that. So. It wasn't that complicated.
I also want to say, like, this film, although it's an NFB co-production, I think we made a 10-minute film with a budget that could have gone for a 5-minute film, for like NFB and Canada standards,
Can we say the figure? I think it's interesting to know, or it's not a secret.
I have to calculate that in euros. Approx, yes. No, it's mix up between Canadian dollars and Croatian kunas.
But
and
we are there at 150,000 at least. If
yeah, something
more.
like that. Yeah. Something like that, yes. Yeah. We got some small amount from Croatian Audiovisual Center because it's minor co-production. I mean, we were minor co-producers, so we couldn't get a lot. We got around.
Yeah, okay, maybe like money, it's important, but it's not the...
Yeah, anyway, we got much less than we expected, so luckily NFB jumped in and paid for the missing parts for the production in Croatia. So although they are a major producer, most of the work was done in Croatia. Also music was done in Croatia by Darko Rundek, a famous Croatian rock star, I would say. So yeah, also part of post-production.
Okay, maybe one or two more, and then we have to finish if there is anybody. Otherwise, Eva, you stay with us until Saturday, right?
I'm leaving Sunday.
Sunday, so you can approach her in more intimate space and ask for more specific questions, but still, one more at least. Not really. Okay, so it will be me, the last question for you. After such a project, you need some time to rest, I would say. But on the other hand, it's so important, almost equally as the production, than like the life of the film. And as it's a film for a festival circuit, I hope you got also like some other channels of distribution. I don't know about this. So how now when you are in the stage that it's almost done, the 2 years of festival life?
1 year.
1 year more to go, okay. Yeah. But are you already like tired to repeat, to do it, to present, and you would like to start something new? And when is this phase when when for you, for example, like a new project will prevail and you will put Hedgehog to sleep in the archive?
Well, I think Hedgehog can keep going while I'm focusing on other things. So hopefully at the end of this year, I can open, I can start focusing on a different project, and Hedgehog can maybe go on tours without me holding his hand. It is, I don't want to be ungrateful, but there does, after, 2.5 years of like being extremely involved with the film, then there's this year of promoting it and repeating things. And so there comes a time where I personally need to move on. But it's also really nice to see the fruit of your labor, achieve things that you would have never dreamed of. So it's
like receiving a Children Award in Japan.
Yeah, yeah. We have two awards, 2 children's awards in Japan. We got a Grand Prix at another children's festival. So the whole point was, like, I wanted to bring this story outside of this region, and I think we really succeeded at that. And we're spreading Branco, Čopić all over the world.
That's also, it's a strong point to say that, while looking for original ideas and concepts, that's something, again, like I'm looking at Špela there, because like choices being made, also like about choosing your language, which is like a language that only 2 million people speak, but because you think that it's important that you will tell the stories. So how is it like to find a project that actually it's local, but then to make it, and you succeeded with Hedgehog's Home to have a local story that it's not so much known out of Yugoslavia, and actually it was written first, it was then a theater play, a radio play. You knew this from the beginning, that it could be a general interest story?
Well, I wouldn't have made it if I didn't believe in that, and I think that, Čopić's stories are universal. They're very local, but they're also very, very universal, and that's a good story. When it has both the flavor of something concrete and unique, but it can also be appropriated by everyone, so. I think, a big part of it, the starting point is the story itself, and then we expand. We expand on that, yeah.
And to make an adaptation, that's my last question, to make an adaptation, it's something that you think it's worth to go on, or you were saying before that this is like 13 years that you were thinking about this particular story, but is it a path for you, like to look for more interesting things that are there already but kind of forgotten or not considered anymore seriously, to revitalize?
Maybe in the future, but I like, I like really doing one thing and then doing something really different. So I think the next thing I do needs to be something that comes from me with a completely different technique, and like a space odyssey or something done completely digitally and super fast. And I'm not saying never, because I really liked, adapting a story, and it was a really cool challenge, but definitely not what I would make all of my films about, or it's not something I would do now, because after spending this much time with a certain way of making a film, I really want to try something completely different. Yeah.
Okay, so tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock at the Kino Dvor Cinema, in the competition program number 3, you will have the chance to see Hedgehog's Home as it should be seen on a big screen. Eva Cvijanović, thank you very much for sharing all those things with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Igor. Thanks for having me.